Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce. He's to my other side on the screen, Mr. Joey Ricotta. And we have a special guest with us, and you can't see him because, as in normal fashion, if we could put it, he'd be represented by his logo, the bear with the morale flag. Mr. DOM Frederic is joining us tonight. Fred, it's good to have you back on, man. It's been a long time since we've officially had you on the show. It's even been still a long time just since we've talked to you as a group of Cubs on Tap guys here, man. First off, how's everything going with you?
Everything's been good. We're 3 weeks away from opening day. I'm excited. I'm ready for Cubs baseball, but I'm also excited to be here. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks again for joining us, man. It's always a blast having you on. I feel like every time we get a discussion with you, I'm anticipating the octaves of our vocals to all elevate and escalate throughout the show here, and I would expect nothing less. But Don, I mean, let's jump right into it, man. There's live Cubs baseball on right now as we're talking here. Some spring training action. Cubbies up 2-1 after the Michael Busch 2-run jack. I mean, Dom, early thoughts here, kind of, like you said, we're 3 weeks away from regular season baseball. What is your sense and your feel right now just with this team and what the Cubs are going to be in 2024?
Ron, I'm in between. I don't want to make it a woe is me thing because ultimately we did get Cody Bellinger. That's a big plus. We did sign Shota. We did make a couple moves here and there that you could argue, could have some decency to it, but the part that's leaving me left wanting for more is I think kind of where we stand as an organization from 30 feet up, 30,000 feet up. Where do we sit in the on the mountaintop of MLB franchises? We can go into discussions on that. I think we have a chance to win the division. I think we have a chance to be successful, chance to get into the playoffs, and I've been very frank about what my expectations are this year. It's to win the division and win a playoff game and win the World Series, and obviously 4 games. What else would it be? But I'm left wanting for more. But at the same time, I guess it's a step in the right direction, and as many Cubs fans would agree, I think we're all excited to see people back at Wrigley again and get back to the Federal Landmark and, get after it and hopefully make some of this year, something we haven't done in 7 seasons. It's been too long.
Ain't that the truth? I'll tell you, I know I'm chomping at the bit. Joey and I were just talking already about opening day before the show, even this evening, just because I think we're all chomping at the bit to get back to the Federal Landmark this year, man. And yeah. I think that's one of the things about this offseason that I really would love your opinion about, because I feel like entering the offseason, most Cubs fans, we sat here and talked about it ad nauseum on Cubs on Tap. Joey, I think you'll agree with me on this. We all were like, hey, Belly's kind of that big fish that everybody wanted to see come back. Everybody wanted to see the Cubs invest a little bit of money in. Understood that maybe the term wasn't going to be what Bellinger wanted, and obviously that's ended up being what happened. But outside of Bellinger, what do you think is the move right now that the Cubs made this offseason that could be that difference maker? Is it getting Shota to add to the rotation with a guy like Justin Steele and with some of the other arms that are already there? Is it getting Michael Busch in the trade for effectively a guy that may never see the major leagues? I know a lot of people liked Jackson Ferris as a prospect, but let's call it what it is, right? He's a prospect until he's not. What is your move in your eyes that could, if it goes right, it really separates the Cubs?
Yeah, I think it's probably Michael Busch because I think the ceiling on Shota is too low, and you can quote me on that, receipt me on it if he goes out and has a stellar year. I'd be happy to be wrong on it. I think it's probably Michael Busch, trying to find a trade partner that you can get an upside prospect with a lot of control. Who I don't know if you're necessarily rolling the dice on Busch, but you're taking somewhat of a chance. But it's not obviously you're giving up Ferris, but I think it made sense to do it. So I think that's really the move, because if he can be a guy that can lock down first base or lock down one of the corners, be the DH, however he's going to fit into the lineup, I think plays a huge role. Ultimately, with that said, I think we only go as far as our starting pitching takes us. That contradicts what I just said about Shota, but at the same time, I think if our starters are gonna go out and carry us, it's because Cade Horton finds a way up at the end of the year. You get a few young guys that can, make a big change. Kyle Hendricks holds it together. Jamison Tyon holds it together, and Justin Steele is an ace like he's been, over the last year or so. But he has something to prove as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go Bush, but I don't know if you can necessarily say outside of Bellinger, there's like huge impact moves that you feel incredibly good about going into the year. Everything is kind of a question mark. I mean, Shota is a real question mark because I correct me if I'm wrong, like no one's called this guy a 2, no one's called this guy anywhere close to a 3. Everyone's kind of said the best case possible is a 3. I'm sorry. No one thought he was an ace, but in best case possible he's a 3. And that's the best case possible. I think that kind of speaks for itself. So we'll see what happens. I think it's ultimately the young guys got to do what they have to do and have a really good season. Our prospects got to show up and kind of make the difference for us to be the team that we all want to be again. Like I said earlier, it's been way too long, and I hate that we're having to rely on such young players to turn a franchise around, but that's where we're at ultimately.
Yeah, 100%. Joey, you got something?
Yeah, not really. I mean, it's interesting kind of hearing what you're saying there, Dom, what you're thinking about. I do agree with you when it comes to Bush. I feel like Bush is like the one guy that, like, if he takes off, or if he like becomes that kind of prospect that the Dodgers were expecting, especially, whenever the Dodgers are in on somebody, I think a little bit better on it. It makes me feel good as far as like prospects go. And I mean, he crushed one tonight, dead center. So he shows you the kind of pop that he has. And yeah, I mean, and like real quick on Shota too, like it's interesting with him. Like nobody really thinks he's a 1-2, like mostly like a 3 or some type of pitcher like that in the rotation slot wise. But it's really weird. Like looking at his strikeout numbers, he doesn't overpower people, but like his strikeout numbers overseas were so good that it's like, okay, well, if he can keep the ball yard, I'm starting to think, well, maybe there is like a different ceiling there. In the first year, though, that's the question mark. Like first year, in the United States, and I think that's where I'm like really, really wondering what's going to happen here.
Well, it's a big year because we're also not taking into account that Dansby's 30. Ian Happ is going to turn 30 soon enough. Seiya, like the cornerstone guys that you have are approaching 30 and beyond, and we all kind of know what that looks like if you're just historically paying attention to players throughout their career. So it's a big year all around. I say it every year. Every season's big. Going back to what Theo said, every season's sacred. I know people aren't a big fan of me like putting the emphasis or putting the pressure on the organization, but I don't know. I think it's necessary because I'm tired of twiddling my fingers, man. I'm tired of moving the goalposts and lowering the bar. I just kind of felt like this. Besides the fact that we signed Bellinger, I said at the beginning of the offseason, I said 2 or 3 things had to happen. You had to re-sign Bellinger. You had to go out and get an impact middle of the order bat, and you had to sign a frontline starter. You either need to do 2 of those 3 things, and I called that being active in the offseason. People want to disagree with me on that. That's fine. I still don't think at the end of the day the Cubs met that because they didn't get a frontline starter, but they did get Cody Bellinger. I felt like that was kind of lowering the bar for us. Again, not to sound pessimistic, but I'm tired of moving the goalposts. I want to get back to being a legit contending organization, a team that other cities and fans and franchises want to be, fear when they, see us on the schedule, love coming to the Federal Landmark, but know that they're going to get their brains beaten in, at 1:20 on a Friday. Like that's what I want to do again. And it's for the 3rd time. It's been way too long since we've been at that point. And I'm not going to lower the bar on this team. I think this organization can be so much better than what it is and what it has been recently, that I want to see it through. But at the same time, like we got a bunch of guys here, we got a bunch of leaders in the organization that have to prove it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, Dom. And I think that's The more and more that I sit around personally and I mull over just what this Cubs team looks like right now, I am very much in
Yeah.
agreement with you that there is a lot of, I guess, pressure, really, for lack of a better term, that the young guys really do need to come up and be like those guys. Like we need,
They
the
do.
Cubs
They
need
do.
a Cade Horton to become that, 1-2 type pitcher in the rotation to complement a guy like Justin Steele. They need a guy like either an Owen Casey or a Matt Shaw or somebody like that to come up probably in the next 18 months, realistically, and
Oh,
be
before that, I would say before that run.
agreed.
I think right now, and as much as I love Christopher Morale, he can't play third base. And we don't want Nick Madrigal, who just has a hamstring strain, to play third base every day.
Yep.
So, right? Like,
Yeah.
someone's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it, right?
Like,
I
someone's got to
think
do it.
I thought already coming into this off season that we were going to see Shaw at some point anyway this season.
Yeah.
I think if he comes out gangbusters like he did last year, right? I mean, you look at the numbers, obviously a small sample size, but he hit at every single level that he touched. Rookie ball was a joke. Low A was a joke. High A was a joke. And even you can make the argument that double A was a joke for him because the guy still almost hit 300 at the double A level. So
yeah,
I'm really excited to see what he does because he's probably going to start in Tennessee is my guess. But there's very much a world where if he's hitting anywhere close to what he finished, I believe, with a 292 average at double A last year. If he hits anything close to that over 50 games, I would say probably at the double A level, maybe a little bit more, 55 games, it's going to be really hard for the Cubs to just sit there and be like, we're going to be patient and because he's a college bat. Like you already have that kind of advantage because he's a little more mature as a hitter. And that's why like some of these guys are worth the draft pick, right? Ian Happ was that way. Nico Horner was that way. Now it looks like Matt Shaw is going to be that way. Your guy, Kyle Schwarber, was that way, originally when he was drafted. So I think they really are going to need and to me, and this is something that I would love to get your thoughts on, Dom, as we steer this conversation and continue our discussion here of just the state of Cubs baseball. Almost appropriate that it's on the night of the State of the Union. We're having a State of the Cubs baseball here over at Cubs on Tap.
Oh, this is the State of the Union night?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But
no idea.
State of the Cubs Union.
I think that's why the move was made by Jed to go get Craig Counsell. Because I think he also looks at this team and goes, we need some of these kids to pan out properly. And if they don't, like we're right back where we started in 2022, where you got to drag it down to the screws and you got to start all over. So they need that development, and it needs to happen at the major league level. And I will applaud Jed because I think the one thing that he looks at the former core and says, what was the one flaw they had? They never developed once they got to the major league level. They kind of plateaued. Everybody became what they were. And that was it. There was no further ascension, right? Like Javier Baez never got to a point where he developed any type of plate discipline. Chris Bryant I think Chris Bryant's case was just he was hurt. I don't think there was any other way to describe it with KB. And you can make the argument about, and you can make the argument like, Rizzo became what you wanted him to be, but there were certain guys that, I mean, you look at that 2016 team, like Addison Russell is a beautiful example of that, who never developed further, fell off the face of the earth and disappeared. There's so many guys, I think, from that group that they look back and went, damn it, they didn't take that next step when they got to the major league level. They want to do that now. And do you think that's where why they went Counsell? Like, what was your reaction and just kind of now seeing him operate as a manager a little bit here in spring training about Craig Counsell in Cubby blue instead of that putrid Milwaukee Brewer blue?
Well, Ron, I don't want to turn the question back to you, but I would maybe argue after what we've seen, obviously there is an arc that a player goes on, right? Like you start off as a rookie, you're figuring it out. But I would almost argue, like, if you don't have it, like, at the beginning, like, it's really hard to find it later in your career, right? And I think early on, we had a bunch of stars, and they were stars, and then they got older, and then they just kind of fell off like they are. Like, I don't know. I think the sample size is kind of too big to show that for us to expect these guys to get better and better and progress later in their years, I think is I don't know, maybe a little naive. I think ultimately why that team back then was so good is because we had absolute studs up and down the farm system. And that's why I'm critical at times about what we have now. Even though the farm system's highly ranked, we have value, but we don't have stars. We just don't. Like, and that's why I get nervous at times just to say, all right, well, we have a great farm system, but if you don't have those impact guys that are going to come in and do it immediately right away within the first 2 years, like, it's kind of hard to build your team around if you don't have that. Going back to what you were asking about Council, it's obviously an upgrade. You know, I would never say that David Ross is a better manager than Craig Council. Craig Council deserves his flowers and deserves the respect that he has earned in his career for everything he did with Milwaukee. I don't want to say that they hired him to get the most out of, you know, a team that ultimately isn't going to be top 5 in payroll every single year. But I do think that if you're Jed Hoyer and you're like, all right, well, how can I find a way to get 3 wins? Is it going to be to go play or pay a player $30 million like they just did with Cody Bellinger to hopefully get 3 extra wins? Or is it going to be $8 million over whatever it is, 5 years, and I can get those 3 wins probably consistently every single year because that's how much better I think the manager is. I think it was a value play for Jed. I hope it works out, you know, because I also was in a way a David Ross guy, and I thought David was given a half-cooked team that he had to put in the microwave in July to get it, on the dining room table, like, again, half-cooked, and by the end of the night, you know, like, it's done.
It's got to be edible. It's got to be edible.
It's you know, and they just ran out of gas at the end of the season. That's why obviously the year finished like it did last year. So I have no qualms about, you know, Craig Council being here, but for many people like you just described, it's a prove it year. I mean, it is prove it. You know, you just got to prove it that you are worth, you know, the $8 million, or you're worth sending David Ross, you know, away and just, you know, getting him fired and acting like he's the scapegoat. Go prove it. I'd love to be wrong. It's not that I think Craig Council's a bad manager. It wasn't the proper hire, but, you know, all these decision makers, they got to prove it. And I'm gonna be very stubborn about that this year. I'm not moving the goalposts anymore. I'm really not. Like, it's time. I said it last year. It's time to win something. I guess we technically won something, but this year it's like, yeah, all right, actually do it. Like, raise something, hang a banner, celebrate. You know, let's accomplish something this year, and hopefully we can get that done.
100%. And I want to turn kind of a question back to you on what you just had to say, because like you said, right, you're tired of moving the goalposts. You're tired of, this team.
I really am.
Do you think the organization has moved the goalposts? And do you think that the new playoff structure is the reason for that? Or do you think it's just more so an ownership attitude thing? Because I look at it and say, well, sure, you know, historically, right, like you maybe needed a top 5 payroll to even make the playoffs and give yourself a chance. Now, I mean, we've seen it ever since the playoff format has expanded. These lower seeded teams that catch fire at the right time have made deep runs in the postseason and given themselves a chance. Yeah. And not to say, obviously, you still look at those teams and they're well-built teams. Like, they're not slouch teams by any means. I think I would make the argument that maybe of all those teams over the last few years that made it deep into the playoffs that were, you know, kind of the quote-unquote lower seeds, the Diamondbacks maybe were the only team that wasn't a complete team. But even then, You still had 2 ace pitchers. You still had a bunch of young starters in their case. And what did they go do? They still went out and added. They added a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez to their rotation. They went and made sure Lourdes Gurriel went nowhere because of the season he had. So do you think that it's the playoff format that's directly responsible for that kind of movement of the goalposts within the organization? Or do you think it's just, hey, we're the Cubs, and as long as they're competitive each season, we as ownership can justify the product that's being put out on the field?
I think it's both. I think for us, I know we all hear it all the time that the line of, Tom got his ring and he's going to rest on it for, the rest of his time here in Chicago. I think part of that is true. I think, listen, like at the end of the day, the Ricketts family, for good or for bad, whether you're, I've been called Karl Marx recently because I think the Cubs should spend more money than what they are. I mean, like this conversation becomes ridiculous because it becomes like, well, these guys own the team and you don't appreciate free market and you're probably a socialist because you don't, you think they should just spread their money out and don't have any capitalism and stuff like that. Like, they're businessmen. It's a bottom line for them, and I think you're right. They want to have a competitive team. I think in the end, what really sets or paints the picture for me is that over a 12-year period, not including this year, over the 12-year period, starting in 2012, going to 2023, those 12 seasons, they averaged 10th in payroll. And I just, they were sometimes second, they were sometimes third, then they were sometimes 27th, and they were sometimes 17th. And if over that long span of time, you're 10th and you're the Chicago Cubs, like, I take issue with that. I just do. I take issue with the fact that if you give me a stat, I don't know where we're at in payroll this year now after
we're
the
currently
Cody move,
sitting
but,
8. I actually just pulled that up. You read my mind. I pulled up the exact same thing.
Par for the course. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, sure, it's okay. Like, but I think it should be more, and I'm gonna expect it to be more. And I just what really paints the picture for me is that it becomes apparent now that, especially with this Cody Bellinger deal, like we are a short market. We are a short term sub $100 million pursuing franchise of free agents. Like, we will go to bat for Cody Bellinger at $80 million for 3 years. We will be licking our chops for the Shota Imanagas, for the Tyones, for the Sayas, for the Ian Happ extension, for the Nico, like all sub $100 million deals. It's actually outside of the ordinary, the fact that we did go out and spend for Dansby. But just looking at it, like when Juan Soto gets on the market, are we going to actually think that we're going to sign him? I'll tell you now, I don't think there's any chance we will. I thought we were going to sign Shohei, but because of the value that he brought in, because of how popular he was and how he's a unicorn. But other than that, like,
agreed.
I won't be able to talk myself into that, and I think the Cubs should be in that discussion, and frankly, they aren't. And that's a deeper topic, but I'll go back to the fact that I think what drives my fandom now as a Cubs fan is the belief in Wrigleyville, the belief in 1060 West Addison, Clark Street, Addison, Cubs fans. I don't feel the same fire for the decision makers. I feel the same fire for what I think this place can be. I don't feel the same way about the people that are actually leading the franchise. And whether you say I'm an idiot for that, whether you say I'm a traitor for that, whatever, I'm negative for that. It's just my honest feelings. I'm not going to lie about it.
That's a real place that you're coming from. So I think anybody can respect that. And you're not alone. Like, there's a lot of fans that do feel the same way and like share that sentiment. And that's why, you are so big in Cubs fandom. Like, people look to your opinions and stuff because they can gravitate towards, they understand, like it's they see what you see and they feel that. And yeah, I kind of lean the other way, Dom, which is always good, right? I like different opinions. So I feel
Tell
like
me,
now,
explain to me why. Tell me the other way. I want to hear. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so not so much like the payroll side, right? Like I agree with you. They should be top payroll team. They should absolutely be that. Like pretty much every year. But like my theory here is, and I'm wondering if maybe if you feel this way, but my theory is that they're waiting to, what extensions that they're going to have to make as far as players go this time around. Because you look at it last time, look at the guys kind of all, and we all know they should spend way more money than they do, but looking at Ricketts, looking at the way things are done, they're just not going to get to that top tier, and that's okay. Like I'm not saying it's okay, but like I'm kind of at a place now. I know they want to spend smartly, so okay,
Yeah,
if you're
I
going to
get
spend
that.
smartly,
Yeah.
so like what are you doing about that? So what guys are you going to give the extensions to? It felt like last time a lot of the guys like ran into the extension at the same time. You got Javi Baez, you got Chris Bryant, you got Anthony Rizzo, you got okay, what decisions should I make here? So now I feel really good about just one of these guys, and this is where my Cubs optimistic mind starts to kind of churn. But I look at like the rising group of prospects that they have put in the system now. I feel like one of these guys are going to take off. I don't know who. I don't know if it's Matt Shaw. I don't know if it's Owen Casey. I don't know if it's PCA or if it's Cade Horton. Like they have put so many of these pieces together that we are going to find a star. Maybe it's Christopher Morel. I don't know who it is, but one of these guys are going to need an early extension. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think it's what I said earlier though. Like guys have to go prove it. And I think what was unique about the last go around of all this is that you could argue that I mean, if you're not gonna re-sign Chris Bryant to when Chris Bryant was Chris Bryant, then I don't know what it is. And you could say in hindsight it was the right move. They did the smart thing by not re-signing him. We're obviously looking at his time now in Colorado as this like sad, decrepit, decaying, career that has pretty much been a total shell of what he used to be. And I think that's fair to say that Jed and Theo knew all along that that was the move. But in the end, to your point, I don't think it's just one guy. Like again, I will use the template of the 2016 team and the amount of stars and legitimate just like cornerstone players that we had on that team. It's incredible, and I think a lot of Cubs fans have kind of forgotten how tough it is to win and how tough it is to put a season together and then actually go into the playoffs and win series on the road, come back when you're down, come back when you've lost the first couple games and everything seems like it's going down the drain. Like it's really tough. And if the Dodgers can't go out and do it every single year with the roster that they have, I think it's silly just to expect that if we get a couple good stars that can figure it out, then we're going to be in that same position. And I know it's a crapshoot. I get it. This is baseball. It's there's a bunch of luck that's involved, but I really value the team aspect after witnessing like we all did what that 2016, 15, 17 team had to go out and win playoff series and go out and win 90 plus games and go do it at a really high level. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we've had good players over the last couple of years, but we just haven't had a team that can go out and do it. We didn't have the team last year that could go out and do it. We ran out of gas, and there's going to have to be a lot of guys that step up, like you're saying, that can go do it and play for 2 weeks at a time and one of our guys get injured and go be a difference maker when it really matters.
I think that it really is that point, right? Like I've come to appreciate, like you said a little bit earlier, Dom, about what Theo had to say. Right, every season is sacred. It really is, because,
Yep.
like you said, it is so hard to win. I think that's why when you've seen, even in fairly recent history at this point, right, the late '90s Yankees and some of these other teams that won multiple championships in a span of only a handful of years, it's so hard to do that. It's hard to do it once,
So hard.
let alone more than once. And it's trying to build that group. And, I think what the optimistic part of me says, I think last year's team built some of that foundation of you saw them kind of come together and they had that run. And maybe it was just a day late and a dollar short because they had to turn on the gas late in the year and get it done. And, maybe this year it's different. But I feel you too with payroll, because I started diving in as you guys were discussing here. And I was like, I got to look at these numbers. The Cubs on their 26-man payroll. So this is completely different than their total payroll, because the total payroll includes retained money, buried money, etc.
Yeah.
193.4 million. That puts them at 9th in all of baseball. And after them, it's a huge drop off to the Cardinals, who are 159 million at 10th. But above them, the Braves are just a tick above the Cubs, 193.5. The Dodgers sit at 196, which is hysterical. But the Rangers are at 215.7. The Blue Jays are at 220.1. The Mets obviously are crazy. They're almost 230. But then the Phillies, the Astros, and the Yankees are the top 3 payrolls in baseball. And the Astros and Phillies in the last 3 seasons have been some of the best baseball teams. And there's obviously reason for that. They're willing to go out and they're willing to spend the talent and win those tough series at home in the playoffs. And yes, you can run into an Arizona Diamondbacks and things can go south, like you noted, right? Like, if it was just the best team wins every year, the Dodgers would have won multiple World Series by now, not just one in a Mickey Mouse season that occurred over the last, before that had been however many years since the Dodgers had won, since the 80s, the late 80s. I think I am in agreement with you that especially now, and this is where like early in the off season, I was very excited. And like, yes, the Cubs are unique. Like, it is truly different here because you look around Wrigleyville and the Ricketts own everything now. And that's all just cash flow coming straight back into the team. But then you look at how they spend and you're like, why isn't there that extra spend? And it doesn't they don't need to be putting up. I don't think the $274 million that the Yankees have as their 26-man payroll is what it takes to win. But if you're at least sniffing that 210 number, I think that's a sweet spot of truly turning this team from, hey, we could be a really nice story and win the division and maybe win a playoff series, to like, hey, we are true legitimate contenders in this thing and can go get it done. Because until you know what you have in these prospects, because again, there's still uncertainties, like you can go pay for proven talent. And I agree with you, Dom. I've seen people like, oh, they're holding out for Soto next year. And I go, first off, they're not going to supplant Seiya because of all the money they invested in Seiya already for Soto. And I said, and let's be honest, they're not paying that money for Soto. The only reason, like you said, they were going to be willing to pay for a guy like Ohtani is because Ohtani brings an entire country with him. Like the return on investment for a player like Shohei Ohtani is different than anybody in baseball. So I get where you're coming from, Dom. And I will say, I feel like as just the offseason persisted, as things have started to happen, like Joey said, there's the optimistic part of my brain that sits here and goes, well, like these, at least a couple of these prospects are going to hit, and like they're going to be guys that this team can rely on and things like that. But then I also do sit here and I look at this team and I go, and it's not a shot at any of these players because I love all these guys, but like I look at Ian Happ as a $20 million a year player and I go, does he really move the needle as a $20 million a year player?
Well, Ron, and two, like, I'd say if Ian Happ does what he did the last 2 years, I think it's a huge win. I really do.
Agree.
And that's not a knock on Ian, but like he very well could start taking a step back. He's getting older. Like if Kyle Hendricks goes out and has another productive year, hallelujah. This guy's like somehow continuing to post every single, I mean, it's incredible. And I think that's kind of the matchup, right? Like you have like this like little core that you have with Seiya, Ian, Nico, Dansby, Justin Steele, and they're like kind of in their late 20s, early 30s. But like each one of those years, then they get further and further away.
Yep.
And that's what you said earlier, Ron. Like these young guys better go out and do it, or else like we got another big gap here that's not gonna figure it out like we had in the 2020, 2021 years where we had nothing coming up from the minor leagues, and we had an older group that was falling behind, and we had to make decisions on whether or not they were going to be here long term, and we obviously saw how that played out.
Yeah. And I think too, one crazy thing that I didn't even realize, because you bring up age, and it's a perfect batting point, because Nico Horner, I would say, of probably that core that you identified is the youngest guy. He's 27 years of age.
Yep.
But like you said, Seiya Suzuki's 29 years old. Ian Happ is 29 years old. Dansby Swanson is 30 years old. Justin Steele's 28 years old. You know what's crazy is Cody Bellinger's only 28 years old. Like Cody Bellinger is younger than most of these guys. And it's like, it's crazy to think about that.
Yeah, that's why Cody Bellinger got what he got. That's why that's why he's getting paid $30 million this year. I mean, even though he's an MVP, if he was 32 years old, there's no way he's getting that. We all know that. I'm not, reinventing the wheel by saying that. Like, it's just the fact of the matter. Like, this guy did it at a really young age. And to what I said earlier, Ron, like Cody Bellinger comes to the league and he's a star, right? And he has, I would argue, Ron, he hasn't really gotten better. Like, the only reason we're talking about Cody Bellinger in the same, vein as like a number 3 hitter and a guy that can, help lead our team is because he kind of went sort of back to his level, but he's not MVP candidate anymore. So I think it's kind of, again, naive to just expect these guys to continue getting better and better and better. I think you show up in the league, you prove it the first 2 years, that's what you're going to be. And you kind of hopefully can do that for a long time. I mean, look at the White Sox run. Like, I mean, you're talking about stars all over the place. It was less than 5 years ago when that fan base thought they were going to win 3 World Series, and they never won a playoff series. They never. I mean, talk about
they didn't even win a playoff series.
They didn't even win a playoff series, Ron. I mean, they had every single guy under the sun that they thought was going to take this team to be one of the best, dynasties. And that's not a knock on White Sox fans, but they absolutely just played themselves. And that's the thing that I worry about is this happened right under our nose, 7 miles south of the federal landmark. And I said it before, like, learn something from that. Learn something from the idea of, all right, we have these young guys, we're just going to extend them and we're just set. And then guess what? It all falls apart and you never win a playoff series. Like, and that's the point I said earlier. It is so hard to win. And baseball is such a fickle, stubborn, just cruel game. And for us just to expect that we have these young guys now, and we have the second or first best farm system in baseball, that it's all hunky-dory, it's all rainbows and gumdrops, like, it's all going to work out. Like, it doesn't work that way, guys. Like, give me a 35-man roster that can go win, 90 games or compete for 162 games, not just like, and put blame on me, the best 9, like I used to talk about, 6-7 years ago. Like, it's not that. It's a full 40-man roster that has to go out and do this thing if you really want to be a successful organization again.
That's true. And dude, there's so many points there that you brought up too. Like, I don't think, you can rely on the extensions of or ascension of your young players. Like, you just can't. Like Ron was saying earlier too, like, a prospect is a prospect until he's not. Like, that's it's so true. Like, and that's why I don't say all of these guys are going to come up and be great, because we just know that's not the case. Like, it's not going to happen, especially like we're seeing it now. And I see Scott in the comments, Wesneski's done 3 innings, 1 run, 4 Ks. Like, Wesneski, is he ever going to be what we thought going into next year or last year? Like, we thought, and we were talking about this pre-show, going into last year, this guy's going to be a stud and this guy's going to be so good, and he flashes that slider and it's so nasty, but then you see a little bit more of him, and he doesn't quite turn out the way that you thought he was going to be, and maybe he's still developing, right? And that's totally true, or totally could be the case for a lot of these guys, where they come up, they struggle, they go back down. And I don't want to put like too many different expectations on some of these guys like Matt Shaw to come up and be like, oh, he's got to be the hero immediately. Like that just might not be realistic either. Maybe he goes a different route than a Chris Bryant who comes up and just, pretty damn good right from the start. Like maybe he's got to go back down and truly figure things out and work on some things and come back. And everybody has their own different route as big leaguers. So I feel like, I don't want to put too much pressure on the kids either. And I don't really feel like this is a year where they're ready to go. Like they're not, I'm just looking at it realistically. Like I'm kind of like you guys are, where, yeah, it is a little bit frustrating. It's a disheartening in a sense where they don't have what you would feel like is a ready to go and just win the World Series roster. But at the same time, we've talked about it. Just get in. You just get in the dance. If you have a well-rounded team, and Dom, you were talking about this, you focus more on just the team and how the team is doing and well-rounded. And I do feel like there are some pieces here that could make this really well-rounded team. So if you do get those above expectation, type of performances from some of these guys, like now we're talking about something that could be really interesting here between the pitching and, the young pitching that's coming up. We can't rely on any of these guys, but I feel like maybe there's some, and that's why I hold my limit to like one or two of these guys is going to be really good, because there's just so damn them. Like that's where I give the credit again to Jed for just like making some of these decisions that were very tough, like among the fan base. Nobody wanted to see Chris Bryant go. Nobody wanted to see Anthony Rizzo go. Nobody wanted to see Javi Baez go. I mean, you start hearing people talk about, oh, he swings and misses too much, blah, 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 with certain guys like Baez and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you can't replicate what that team did in 2016, what that team did in 2015. Nothing will ever be like that again in Cubs history. Like that's just, it's unrealistic to actually to ask for that, because we'll never be as high as we were for those years. So now I just want really good baseball, and I want to win too. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think that we can, I think you're right. Like expecting them to spend on someone like Juan Soto is fool's gold at this point. Like, I don't know where that expectation comes in from, but I mean, it'd be nice, right? Like, please, if you think the team's ready to go, spend the money.
Yeah, I would hope
mixed,
so.
Mixed thoughts right there.
Yeah, no, I would hope so, and I think kind of going along what you said. I think maybe part of why I have the opinion that I have now is that I don't know. You watch. I mean, I've been a Cubs fan all my life, but really over the last 7 years, I feel like all us Cubs fans have been hobbled a lot, right? Like we've kind of seen a great team, what we thought would be a dynasty, what we thought would for sure get back to a World Series. I mean, can you imagine after the 2016 World Series, if someone would told you that group is going to win, not only that group, but you as an organization is only going to win one playoff series for the next 8 years? Can you imagine being told that? I mean,
Nope.
and not winning a playoff game after that? I mean, it's literally disbelief. So I think for someone who is I mean, not that I'm unique in any way, but like for someone who's as locked into what the Cubs are and what the Cubs do on a daily basis and what they've been for, this 10-year stretch, like it definitely humbles you when you just kind of put that into perspective. And like, yeah, we haven't won a playoff game since the National Series. Or no, actually, no. I was at the last playoff game. It was Jake Arrieta at the Federal Landmark, Game 4. They were about to get swept by the Dodgers, right? I believe it was Game 4. That was the last playoff game that we won. Jake started, and we haven't been back since. We haven't
Yeah.
been back
Yeah,
since.
it's frustrating.
It's crazy.
I
It
would have
is
never
crazy.
guessed it though. Not to cut you off, Ron. I would have never guessed that after that 2016 team. I mean, I was shouting,
Yep.
running up and down the streets in Chicago, running up and down Wrigleyville, like, "Oh, we're gonna win!" And that's just it's madness to think about because, like you
Of
said,
course.
it's so hard to win
Yeah.
every single year. It's so hard to just win your division.
Yep.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
I gotta ask though,
Exactly.
Dom, like, what is your real expectation for this year then? Do you think they will make the playoff? I mean, I know you want them to win and win the World Series, and that's what you obviously you're shooting for every year, but do you think they will make the playoffs, or are we just what are we looking at?
So I am not. I think because in a way, I've kind of taken a step back. I am putting this in Jed's hands. Like, I want Jed to prove it to me that they can go win the division. I'm gonna see it through. I thought I saw it throughout the offseason until we got to spring training, and then I kind of put the pressure on. Not that it meant anything, but I was like, all right, like, let's go now. Let's go re-sign Cody Bellinger. Let's get this going. I think I'm gonna be the same way in terms of the season. Like, go out and prove to me. Go out and win a division. Like, I think we can win 85 games. I don't think we're a 90-win team. I think a lot of Cubs fans would agree with that. 85 wins. Go win the division. Go try to make some type of run in the playoffs. Have some type of pride again, and and bring some type of glory back to the federal landmark. I think all of that is within reason. If you don't, head's got to roll. If you don't, I'm sorry, just do. Like, I don't know what we're doing here anymore. If we keep rolling back in October and saying, well, we didn't meet our goal. It's underwhelming, and we'll be active this offseason. I don't know how you can go back and do that if we don't have substantial progress in winning division or being a wild card team that comes out like a bat out of hell and is an absolute problem for some of these higher seeded teams in the playoffs. Like, if you're not that, then I mean, I don't know if Tom will do it, but like, I go back to Theo. Like, he said for years back when we were rolling, we've set the bar higher. The standard has been raised. We're a
Yeah.
different organization now. We have higher, thoughts, and we just are going to be a team that sets the tone throughout the league. That's what I mean, call me naive, call me foolish, call me someone that got sold snake oil, but that's what I kind of grew up on more or less as a Cubs fan. I was obviously, a lot older while that was going on, but like, still, I think a lot of Cubs fans can relate to that. That's the best time of their history as a Cubs fan. And I hold that near and dear, and I took that literally, back in the day. And I've heard it so many times, like, Dom, you're an idiot. Like, you should have saw right through it. You should have known that once they won the World Series that they're going to take it back and they're just going to rest and they're going to build the sports book and they're going to make Wrigleyville into Disneyland, and they're just a real estate company, Dom. You don't get it. You don't get it. Like, I've heard that for years. But I want these guys to prove it. I want these guys to prove it. I'm not moving the goalposts. Yes, I think we can win 85 games. I think we can win the division, but at the end of the day, it's not what I think. It's about what these guys go out and do.
Yep, 100%. I think one thing too, Dom, just to kind of circle back quickly here to our discussion in regards to spending money. I think if this team is hell bent done, well, we don't want to overspend on free agents and give these guys that top dollar that your typical free agents get. Scott kind of read my mind because I had this question teed up and he dropped something similar in the comments. He says, I'm waiting for the trade deadline and for Jed to trade some top prospects for a proven difference maker. And that's what I want to see the Cubs do. If they're not willing to spend the money in free agency, then go out and trade for a guy that has 4 years of team control that you're not going to have to pay top dollar to, but is going to help you win ball games.
Ron, but too, like, where's the Nolan Arenado trade? Where's your Paul Goldschmidt trade? Where's your Christian Yelich trade? Where's your William Contreras trade? Like, where is it? And we used to do it. Like, we did Jake Arrieta. We did Dexter Fowler, right? Like,
Yep.
These moves were big. These moves were game changing. These moves, and frankly, we haven't partaken in them since what, the Quintana deal, right? Like,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I don't think there's been a big time trade deadline or trade move that helps the Cubs not only short term but long term. And whether it's, you know, you've gotten cold feet because you've gotten burned in the past, or you're holding on to your prospects and don't want to let them go and want to try to get as many bites at the apple of, you know, cost controlled players that are super young and hopefully will be, you know, the next core of your team. Whatever that may be, that's fine. But I've said this to multiple people, and I am steadfast in this belief that I need Jed Hoyer to be a difference maker, not a placeholder. I need Jed Hoyer to be the best at his job compared to
Mhm.
anyone else in the organization. Like, Jed has to be an absolute wizard if the Cubs are going to go out and be a team that, over the course of their time, are 10th or 9th in payroll. Like, you got to be a
Yeah.
wizard. You have to be Theo Epstein. And I know Theo took this thing to the moon, and he didn't care, you know, at the end. He was just going to try to spend as much as he could, and ultimately he knew it wasn't going to happen, so he left early, and he saw the writing on the wall, and he never got back into baseball because of
Yeah.
it. You know, like, it was his last hurrah. I get it that those are different circumstances, but in the end, I need Jed to be a savant. I need Jed to be freaking Picasso up in that press box. And if he's not, then I think we all need to look around and find who's that next guy, because ultimately, if we're not going to be a top spender and we're not going to be super aggressive in the trade market, then tell me where the stars are coming. Tell me where these big time stars are coming in. That's going to make us a perennial favorite, not only in division but in the National League for years to come. Like everyone wants, like everyone is expecting the Cubs are going to be through this second rebuild. I need Jed to prove it to me.
Yeah. I agree. Incredibly well put. Dom, I have one more question for you here before we let you go, and we
Yep,
appreciate taking up an hour of your evening and you joining us here.
absolutely.
This one's a little more of a fun one, and this one's a little bit of a promotional time for you. Do we have any cool Morale Supply Co.
Yes,
Collaborations coming up in
we
the near
do.
future? Okay.
Ron and Ron, actually, I just got word this week about confirmation with something we're going to do that I'm super excited about, and I think a lot of fans are going to be excited about. We've kind of, over the years with Morale, you know, we've always done shirts and we've done hoodies and stuff like that, but I think fans will start to see we're gonna up the ante a little bit, and I think what we're gonna produce for opening day will be the best product we've ever produced. I'm not saying that because I asked you to, you know, hey Ron, just pitch me this question so I can do
No,
like a little promo. No.
I didn't even I didn't
I
even tell
actually
you anything before we got on here. I was like, hey, I'm just gonna drop this at the end because I'll admit that I've got we're not Chicago's never leaving hoodie. I've got I
thank
love
you.
your collabs, and especially when they go to good causes and things like that. My mom still rocks the bear and the scrub shirts from back with the Foxtrot
Oh
and
yeah, back
for
from
the
COVID. Yeah,
nurses. Yeah.
absolutely.
So like
Yeah.
it's cool seeing you partner with everybody, and especially when it has like a tie for a good cause and things like that. So that's why I want to ask, because I get excited about them too. So I'm
I,
excited that you're
I'm not.
excited, because that's
I,
setting the
I'm
bar high, Dom. You got to remember that now.
I'm not going to promise that this is necessarily for a charitable cause, but I will say it's going to be fantastic. I've already seen it,
All right, all
and
There
right.
you go.
actually, Ron, if you're being honest, Ron, like I think the people that know me best probably like this type of stuff, like creating the I don't know
Mhm.
new designs and new products, probably get me the most fired up. Besides, you know, the Cubs winning, so I'm really excited about this.
Heck
I
yeah.
don't think, I mean, maybe the people that don't like me are gonna say this is stupid, but whatever. But I think people that I don't know kind of understand what I do and have a sense of I don't know nostalgia regarding Wrigley Field and the federal landmark in Wrigleyville in general are gonna really appreciate this, and I can't wait for it to go live. It's gonna be a fantastic product. I'll put my name on it. It's going to be great, and I can't wait for people to see it in person.
When are we going to get an announcement? Can you give us a date of when we'll know?
I would imagine either one or 2 days before opening day. I
Okay.
think we're going to go live for not necessarily this product in general, but maybe half of the release will go live maybe next week. But
Okay.
the product that I'm most excited about will be opening day, around opening day. And we'll have it available for a couple of days like we do. You know, if you guys want it, like, get after it. It'll be on pre-order. If not, like, no worries. And yeah, I'm excited for people. I'm really excited for it. I haven't said that in a while for stuff that we've put out, but even though our stuff has been good, but this is going to be a unique product and definitely the highest quality thing we've done. So I'm excited.
Heck yeah.
Nice.
I'm excited now. You've set the expectation for me now. So I'm
It's
fired
gonna be
up.
really good.
I'm fired up as
It's
well,
gonna be
man.
really good.
That's
Yeah,
what we
it's
like
gonna
to
be
hear.
really good.
I will let you know, Fred, that I bought on your last drop of the Wrigleyville white hats because I wore
Yeah.
mine so much to the point it was yellow the first time. I bought 3 of them
Oh.
on the last drop because I know I'm going to cycle through them over the course of the season because that's
I
like one of my
appreciate it.
favorite hats that I have. So, now, man,
Thank you. I appreciate
it's
it.
been awesome having you on, and as always, we appreciate you having you on, Dom. And I encourage everybody. I'm sure most people that listen to us follow you as well, but if they don't, to be sure to do so, especially with the Morale Supply Code, drops and things like that. I mean, you guys are doing awesome stuff over there as well. So we appreciate you a lot, man. And
Yeah.
just
Thank
quickly
you,
before we sign off, again, want to remind everybody, Cubs on Tap, at Cubbies on Tap on the socials. Be sure to follow us there. I am at Loose on Tap, at Joey Knows Nothing, at Dom_Frederic on the socials. Be sure to give us all a follow. And you guys know the drill. We got everything covered. Shout out our friends over the Dingers podcast at Dinger Cubs and the On Tap Sports Network. Go and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Dom, again, a pleasure for you joining us again. And as always, let's go Cubbies.